Before I start this video today, I just want to comment and say that there are many men out there with really great qualities. Now, I've been on a very long journey, I think, trying to not only find myself and just trying to evaluate what really is a good man or who would fit the characteristic traits of a good man. And the way in which I was raised, I would perceive a good man as being very predictable in terms of growing up. I saw my dad come home at 5 every day religiously and off to work at 8, and other things about my childhood that I prefer not to get into the details of, because this is not about that. But what I've realized is that there are a lot of women out there with, like I've said in some of my previous videos, with a long list of characteristic traits that defines a good man, or suitable for them rather. And usually across the board, there is a consistent trend of how men should be. And I think men have really come under the radar in terms of trying to live up to those expectations that maybe are somewhat unrealistic. Now, a good man, in my eyes, was somebody that was filled with lots of characteristic traits on a list that I had myself as well. But I got rid of that list. And the reason why I got rid of the list is because it wasn't working for me. It really wasn't. And to be honest, I had to walk away from a few situations very quickly. So the list was a bit helpful, but it was a very brutal list of characteristic traits that I was using to define a good man. Now, I must reiterate that this is not knocking anybody that I've had encounters with, or if I were in a relationship at any point in time and I had to walk away from that, because I was very quick to walk away. I didn't really take shit, to be honest. I would allow a person to do as much as they wanted to. I'd watch them. I'm very good at watching. And I'd allow them to express themselves as they would naturally, as much as possible. So I would create a level of comfort where I would allow people to even take the piss, to be honest. And I'd allow it to go on for enough time where I thought the person would be reasonable and rational to the point of having a conscience. And there are many times that some people did not. And I couldn't understand it. Why, for lack of a better word, why there was no conscience involved, why people were so harsh when it came on to love. And maybe in retrospect, it's because they had their own list as well. But I think most importantly, what I had to do, and what I'm still in the process of doing, was learning more about myself, how I was designed, how I am designed, and what I could actually choose in terms of outside of my design, because it's very important to be able to understand your own design and realize that sometimes that design which was given to you at birth and through socialization may not be necessarily the qualities that you would have chosen for yourself had you been at a higher level of consciousness, but that responsibility was placed on others. And also under recognizing that certain qualities are there for a reason, which is to guide you on the path. But if those qualities that are laying latent in one's mind show up that are not good for you, and there's a repetition of a cycle of actions and activities that seem outside of your control, but you don't understand why, but you keep doing it, then it's necessary to look at those characteristic traits and ask yourself, is this what I really want my life to be like? Is this the characteristic traits that I want to embody? And is this what I would want from somebody else in terms of how I would want somebody else, a man, to treat me? Now, I've had the most mind-blowing experience after a very, very tough, I think, past 3 years of basically fighting on my own, selecting very carefully. I think I went into like hermit mode a lot as well, withdrawing from connections. It didn't really matter if it was intimate or not, because friendships, associations, choices pertaining to whether it is career paths, anything at all like that, I was inclined to relook at, and I needed to relook at, because I had to find, I guess, my own happy, and it wasn't happening. It wasn't happening, and the reason why it wasn't happening is because I didn't understand myself. Now, how do you attract a good man if you're lacking understanding of self? Even if they showed up, you wouldn't be able to identify it. And if you did identify it, would you be able to keep it? So I had to go through a transformation type process. And what I've recognized is that a good man is not necessarily within the context of saying it's a religious perspective or a person operating from a tangent of being perfect. A good man is a man that identifies his own weaknesses and areas of development that will allow him to move to the greater version of himself. And the reason why this is important is because moving to the greater version of himself will allow him to attract and sustain his own quality people that support his happy. Now, this is not what society tells us at all. Society isn't saying, look at the weaknesses, and some of the weaknesses are passed on as if they are strengths. And some weaknesses are put into categories of being celebrated almost. And some characteristic traits and choices are also almost justified to the point where some men are even forced to become a version of society as a man rather than to become the greater version of themselves. Now, one of the things that I realized as well is that I was looking outside of myself for somebody else to come in and fill those gaps and weaknesses that I was really afraid to face off with me. Now, at the stage I am in my life, it is not perfect at all. I've a lot of things that I've put in place to create a lifestyle and a blueprint in in not preparation, I don't like that word too much. Our expectation in knowing very clearly that at at some point I will be operating within the type of life that I've dreamt about. Now, the type of life I've dreamt about with a good man um, doesn't necessarily support some of the ideas and concepts or ways of being that I'd learned growing up. Because I think I saw a lot of women go through a lot of heartbreak and a lot of lack of understanding of themselves too. So I was adamant, that's not gonna be me. I'm not gonna stay in situations where people are scarred to the degree where I become a victim in any scenario just because I'm trying to do what society suggests is the correct way of approaching things, or because it looks better on the outside, because I should have a husband, I should have a certain lifestyle, I should have certain things that I would acquire on a level that would basically destroy me in the process. Now, what I've realized is that there's a lot of conversation and discussions going on about how men want versions of women that align with um, a contradiction of their ability to um, to have certain qualities in themselves. Example, what I've realized is that there are quite a few men that they say that their design is justified as a man to be promiscuous. Well, to sleep with whosoever they choose. And in doing so, they would say, okay, well, I've slept with whosoever I've chosen, as many as I've chosen. And when it comes down to it, I want somebody that is the complete reverse of the actions that I've taken or the man has taken. And at first, I thought, yeah, I can see that because, we are taught that men basically operate from the viewpoint of being wild, not having control, having certain qualities that are celebrated in the society as a strength rather than areas of development. Now, obviously, I don't know what it is like to be a man. So, some men will go through a lot of sexual frustrations. But I think there are men out there who they get they get the rap in terms of when they're trying to act in conjunction with their own design to operate on a higher level, to be superior to what the society has suggested that is best for them. They come under pressure from other connections, even women, um, suggesting that having control of self is actually deemed as not good. Now, basically, if you look at the data or just general information, you see that not all men are wild, or not all men lack control, or not all men see it that it's a lack of control to operate like that. But the irony is going back to the fact that the man will want somebody who is the complete opposite of him, exploring and sowing his oats, so to speak, and somebody that's pristine and somebody that unflawed. What I've realized is that is because there may be a subconscious seed in the man's mind, a sort of shame that he didn't necessarily recognize in himself, the qualities that were consistent with being able to identify a greater version of himself as a female. Yeah. So his assessment was flawed in his subconscious mind, because had it not been flawed, then he wouldn't have necessarily moved on so many times. And had it not been flawed, he would be able to come to an honesty in himself, to be able to see that it doesn't mean necessarily that because people have made decisions and they have their assessment was not specific enough to the degree where they had to walk away from certain situations, it doesn't make them less of a greater version of themselves. Actually, one of the reasons why some people are unable to make decisions that are specific is because, like I've said before, they don't understand how they operate, and they don't understand what it would be like to find their ideal match, and they don't realize how to use opposite traits in that match to be able to bring balance into a connection or relationship. And they also operate from the viewpoint of a lot of information being fed to them about how they should be from an ego standpoint, how it should be perceived as what is the perfect characteristic traits that fits into the society. So a lot of people are operating from the context of just living to please the society rather than self. And then men that try to be honest, or women who try to be honest, with groups who try to be honest about their characteristic traits, they get a backlash from the society sometimes, even though it should be celebrated rather than what's the word, almost like a crucifixion process. Now, I put out the submission video, and I've been looking at how women are perceived in the society and what is a good man. Now, I think when you come to a recognition of who you are as a person, the good man just shows up. And when he shows up, the experience is such a natural one. And when I say good man, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm talking from the viewpoint of going to an institution of religious belief, or even though, I mean, that's people's personal choices. It doesn't mean that he operates from a perfect standpoint. It doesn't mean that he's not confused about certain things. It doesn't mean he hasn't come to a state of self realization. It doesn't mean that he has all the answers. It doesn't mean that if he enjoys certain pleasures, that it should come under judgment. I think a man can be a good man around a woman that allows him to be himself without coming under judgment. And the way for that to happen is there must be, and I keep going back to this, the design of the woman and her. Once she's able to understand her own design, she can see more clearly the design of the man and what stimulates, challenges, or caters to his needs and so on. So this ideology about a good man being perfect is flawed in itself, because a good man is ever evolving, growing, changing. There are so many aspects within the society that the man can express himself through development, and also to be able to express himself, whether it is through advancing through the knowledge, onto the knowledge ladder, accepting that he knows a lot or a bit and that he knows nothing as well, advancing in terms of how he treats other people, his connections, the relationships that he forms, advancing in being able to say, yes, I am strong, yes, I am designed fundamentally to be able to be a warrior if necessary, or to fight if necessary, but having, acknowledging within himself that um it's okay to be humble. It's okay to feel pain. It's okay to feel emotion. It's okay to feel confusion. It's okay to be himself within the constructs of his own design, but still deviate from that design as he evolves through time and recognizes his own qualities he wants to form, which makes him the greatest version of himself within the society. And the thing is that it's easier for a man to be a good man from that perspective when they actually have the support from the woman, and the woman deviates from the or moves away from that list that is organized and ordered for generic assessments and groups, but not specific and unique to individual situations. Now, when one is looking at it from that perspective, it changes the whole ball game. Now, I'm not talking about imperfections like violations against self or violations against others, because I'm not in support of violations. I'm talking about things that are one can change easily. And even if, let's say, hypothetically speaking, violations did occur on some levels, there's a violations that the man exhibits traits of, whether aggressiveness, or he has been violent in the past, or he has done certain things and he comes to the point of realization and regret and takes action to not go in that direction again because he has made mistakes or the experiences of life due to him not being at a conscious level caused him to do certain things, or he just necessarily enjoys it and he needs to connect with people who support that form of behavior patterns that don't have an issue with that. However, what I've realized is that yes, I was a bit harsh in saying yes, I must be honest about the fact that yeah, I've observed women allowing men to really violate on so many levels, and they stay in these relationships because they celebrate the the money, the lifestyle, the the reasoning behind not wanting to walk away because of the children, which I can see the justification or the loss of financial commitment and so on. Yes, I was very hard about that, but and I've always encouraged women to say, don't be quick to walk away from a relationship because it's very difficult to survive on one's own. But what I can say from my own experience is that when I found myself in situations where I experienced any degree of violation that was unacceptable and intolerant, I had to come to a point in myself where I, excuse my language, I was going to cuss. I had to say F society, F what people thought, because when I close my door, I'm the one going through those situations. I'm the one that's feeling it, nobody else. So it took a lot of courage on my part to walk away from certain scenarios. And looking back on the path, I, w- I would encourage women to stay in situations if the man is a good man within a flawed perspective, but not to the degree where compromise is self. Because having walked away from those situations has made I've learned so much. It has made me leap into the great, not greatest, because I'm still learning, a version of myself that I had no idea was laying latently inside of me. And until I was willing to take the steps and have the courage to say, I don't know what my financial situation is gonna be. I know emotionally and physically and sexually my needs will not be met. I know it's gonna be a struggle and a fight, and it's gonna be very hard. I know I'm gonna come under judgment from the society. I know many people look at it and say, what is she doing? But I had to do it to find myself first. And in finding myself, then I was able to move myself to the higher tangent of being able to say these qualities that I look for in a good man, can I actually emit those things and can I maintain those things? So I had to go into a whole planning process and a clearing out, a cleansing of myself and thinking what are the goals that I want to put in place to get to, what are the challenges I will have to face, how will I find other routes to be able to get to this life that I dream of in my mind, and still understand that when it's a good man, when he shows up, he will be able to see the value in the journey that I've taken. And if I do come under judgment from him from any level, it will be either constructive or it will be a fair assessment. And why would it be constructive and why would it be a fair assessment? The reason why it would be a constructive and a fair assessment is because my ability to be able to assess what qualities are in another person, I would have been able to reflect that from me. I had to be strategic as well. I had to be very strategic because I realized that, I was a little softy in a way, and I would make excuses for people too. And in making excuses for those people, it was easy to make excuses for myself. And I had to put strategic measures in place to make it difficult for anybody to access me on a very intimate level where I'd give my heart and all that, and myself. And I had to hold back and save some many aspects of how I'd operate on a higher tangent to be able to distinguish between who was fake and who was real. Because anybody can be on the journey with you when things are good, but you really need to know who is who when things are bad, when the challenges come, when you have to rise above the situations that are in front of you, when you're not faced with society being all for you or applauding your decisions, but totally against it. And that's when you know who is who. That's when you know the characteristic traits of that good man. Because believe me, I've seen quite a few people, friends, family, associates, uh, strangers. Well, the strangers would not apply, fall off the journey because of impatience, because of what society deem as what is acceptable in terms of wealth status. I mean, we went through all of that earlier. So I just want to encourage the men out there. I'm going to close the video now. I just want to encourage the men out there to say, I can see where some of the actions are justified, but you all have the, well, not all, but I shouldn't say all. Many men out there have the capabilities, or not capabilities, they have the ability to rise to the highest versions of themselves. But it requires a stripping down of the old self. And it also requires an honesty that allows you to judge yourself from the perspective that it's fear and not ego based or afraid of controversy. So all the men out there who are trying, that's really good, and I celebrate that myself too. And I just want you to be encouraged and keep on the journey. And women, we need to really look at this list that we have. I think the list should turn on ourselves and allow us to improve ourselves. And in allowing us to improve ourselves, then it makes it easier to see to see a version of a woman that is beautiful rather than men and women trying to tap into versions of women that, sometimes they're so inexperienced as well and young. They don't have an exposure to life, although youth has nothing to do with it. And when I say youth, I mean people have a standard where they can choose to sexually commit or marry or whatever. And I think, we need to really turn that list on ourselves and push through and create the society that is a better version of a society that, all there's so much information of seeing others as the worst version of who they are, and be a lot of living in fear. And I don't want to live in fear anymore, not from that perspective. I just want to embrace that life and that good man. And I would say to you, that those women who are looking for a good man, that there's one out there for you. So guys, I'm gonna close the video. Subscribe to the channel, press the like button if you enjoyed this video, as well as make a comment. That would be really great for us. Have a great weekend and a prosperous week ahead, and a happy 2023 moving forward.